Ever since the Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom released back in May, fans have been expecting an announcement for some sort of DLC expansion. Lock it in for this direct, everyone said back in June. Surely this time we'll get some announced, is what we were all saying, looking ahead to the inevitable September direct. And they weren't wrong to think so. Breath of the Wild had a whole expansion pass that was announced before the game even released. But as it turns out, as recently reported, it seems there isn't any DLC planned for Tears of the Kingdom. The developers are satisfied with the product they put out, and that's great. It's a fantastic game after all. Besides, Breath of the Wild only got DLC because they had even more ideas for the game. Heck, that's even how the sequel began. But what if we did get DLC for Tears of the Kingdom? Well, we have some fun ideas for what sort of content we could have gotten, as well as some ridiculous hopes for what could have made for some amazing extra content. So, without further ado, let's go over some of our DLC ideas for Tears of the Kingdom. First off, something that many players really wanted for Tears of the Kingdom was some way to share your AutoBuild blueprints. You know, some way for someone to share an amazing creation they made. They were all over Twitter and other social media in the months following release, but there really wasn't a way to share how to make these things. It would have been great if Tears of the Kingdom introduced a feature like that. Maybe something like the Tinkle Bottles in Wind Waker HD. Just some sort of online toggle that allows blueprints to be found from other players. You could also share your auto builds on the internet, maybe through some sort of Sheikah tech in the Puripad, or a specific Zonai terminal maybe. And maybe it could allow you to search for ones made by friends or by specific users, perhaps using a code or something. Seeing how many impressive things have been built using Ultra Hand in Tears of the Kingdom, it is still a little disappointing that we never got a way to share auto-build blueprints. And it's basically the number one idea I've seen floating around for any sort of content update for this game, not even necessarily paid DLC. But as for some paid DLC, let's start with the basics. Of course, we would probably see a Master Mode, just like back in Breath of the Wild. Come on, Nintendo, make that Ganondorf battle ridiculously hard. It would be exciting to fight some of the brand new enemies and especially the brand new bosses with the regenerating health and the added difficulty from Master Mode. And on a similar challenging note, the Trial of the Sword from Breath of the Wild could also make a return in Tears of the Kingdom. You know, basically the first Breath of the Wild DLC that made the Master Sword even stronger by going through the whole gauntlet. This time around, probably through something accessed from the Temple of Time up in the sky, to test the might of the revitalized Master Sword, or something along those lines. It was a great challenge in the original Breath of the Wild, and adding that into Tears of the Kingdom would be great. But moving on, one of the biggest questions players had through the entirety of Tears of the Kingdom is where is Kass? Seriously, this beloved Rito bard somehow missed out on Tears of the Kingdom. Even his family is still here in the game. And other characters even make reference to him, but he's just gone. So getting some sort of DLC that brings Kass back to Hyrule with a new story would be interesting. Perhaps teaching more about characters from the ancient time of Hyrule's founding, to get more on Rauru, Sonia, and maybe even the ancient sages. We never really learned anything about them after all. It would basically be similar to the Champion's Ballad in Breath of the Wild, and it would also explain why Kass was missing this entire time, because it's genuinely surprising how that's never been explained. But something a bit different from just repeating DLC from Breath of the Wild, one idea I would love to see is getting some sort of special quest with Queen Sonia's spirit, because Link never actually met Queen Sonia, and that feels a little strange. The entire introduction to the game is him being guided around by King Rauru. So why did he never meet Sonia? It would have added a lot to have encountered her and gotten new information about her life, and the general founding of Hyrule, and Zelda's role in the past, all from Sonia's perspective, especially since Sonia's spirit shows up in the ending sequence alongside Rauru's. But it feels kinda odd since she never actually encountered Link in the story. Having some sort of added sequence where we do get to interact with her would kinda complete this. Okay, now for some more outrageous ideas and hopes. These are ideas that I don't think are entirely realistic, but could totally still be fun to get. And the number one on this list for me is some sort of Playable Zelda DLC. This would be some sort of big DLC accessed from the main menu, like Xenoblade Chronicles 3 getting the Future Redeemed DLC. But it would be playing through Zelda's time in the ancient past, exploring the world and interacting with its people, playing up to the moment she becomes the Light Dragon. It wouldn't be as gameplay heavy as the main game with everything Link can do, and if there were any battles, she might play closer to how she did in Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, for example. But as a whole, it would be largely more story-focused. Since people weren't a big fan of the memories this time around again, it would be a different way to tell different parts of the same story. And it would also address the fact that in the lead up to this game, pretty much since it was announced, fans had been begging for a playable Zelda. But moving on to a different idea, what if Link was sent back to the ancient past with Zelda, and they were trapped there together, living through the founding of Hyrule and facing the threat of the Demon King Ganondorf back then, rather than in the present? You know, basically an alternate universe story. Well, this would probably be a Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity 2. And they would probably have to lose if they were still sent to the past from a confrontation with Ganondorf in the future, unless it's a completely alternate timeline like Age of Calamity. But this little idea I thought was charming to call A Link to the Past. Moving on to another rather common idea I see tossed around on social media, getting some sort of Ganondorf backstory. Either another big DLC accessed from the main menu where you actually play as Ganondorf, or something added to the main story where Link gets to see Ganondorf's memories, allowing you to experience Ganondorf's rise to power and his influence back in the ancient past. We only really had a few scenes of Matthew Mercer's Ganondorf in the game. It would be pretty exciting to get even more of that, really building him up more as a character and seeing how he reached this point. Moving on, I would love if there was some sort of Dark Link, or I guess in this case a Gloom Link, to battle that had Link's exact skills. Kinda like how Ganondorf can perfect dodge your attacks to get a Flurry Rush, and uses the same weapon types as you. This wouldn't be its own standalone DLC, of course. It would probably be attached to any of the other DLC ideas we've talked about thus far, but getting a proper Dark Link battle in this would be really fun. And I've been thinking about that ever since going to fight Ganondorf in the final boss, because he kind of plays like a Dark Link battle at first. Finally, getting some sort of story to explore the origins of the ancient heroes aspect would be fascinating. You know, the reward for completing every shrine in the game. What was that world like? What trials did this hero go through to become the hero of that era? Were they named Link? This would probably be yet another DLC accessed from the main menu that could give yet another take on this world, without being a full-fledged, complete, different Zelda game. But with that, that's going to do it for our DLC ideas for The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. It's been an active discussion in the months following the game's release, and I'm sure now that we know we won't be getting any DLC, people are going to be talking about it even more. So what do you guys think? Do any of these DLC ideas strike your fancy? Or have you been sitting on a DLC idea that you think would be perfect for Tears of the Kingdom? Let us know down in the comments below, and stay tuned to GameXplain for plenty more on The Legend of Zelda and other things gaming as well. Until next time, farewell everyone.